Hey guys, so I know that the PvP balance in this game is mostly around 5v5 conquest mode, but if you are somebody like me who enjoys roaming and dueling, then this video will give you some ideas about how to build your thief. When I'm theory crafting roaming builds, I want to make sure that it has mobility, it can fight anything I encounter, and have some survivability in outnumbered fights, but still have enough damage to finish off opponents. These are the trait lines I use for roaming. If you can play Staff Acrobatics Daredevil to its potential, you can pretty much win any fights, including against Dragon Hunters, who are generally known as hard counters for thieves. However, you might struggle finishing off heavy bunker builds or support builds. But that goes for pretty much any power builds out there, with the exception of maybe Revenants, I guess. You can swap acrobatics to deadly arts to finish off bunker builds, but you will have harder time against dragon hunters. And it also doesn't have permanent swiftness, which is kind of discouraging in a roaming situation. As for stats distribution, this is what I have. I use mostly Marauder gear with Daredevil runes, and Marauder trinkets with 2 Berserker rings. You'll also notice that I have some Crusader stats. I think that when it comes to defensive stats, toughness is only useful against power builds, while vitality is useful against both Condi and power builds. But at the same time, you don't want to overstack vitality because it reduces your healing skill's effectiveness in terms of health percentage recovered from healing. So the reason why I brought up health threshold is because there are traits in this game like Executioner, Elementalists, Bolt to the Heart, Necromancer's Chill of Death, and even Warrior Greatsword burst skills. All of them can punish you harder when you have lower than certain health threshold. So when you are pressured and you use your heal skill, you want to replenish your health as close to 100% as possible. And that's why it makes sense to kind of balance out your defensive stats, both toughness and vitality. In any fight I encounter, I mostly stay on staff unless it is an outnumber fight. Even then, like staying on staff as long as possible is preferred because CCs and Immobilize are your biggest weakness. It leaves you vulnerable to damage, and Staff solves one thing for thieves if you're running bound. The Staff 3 skill lets you clear Immobilize on demand, which is really powerful. So here's some things you can do on Staff. Bolt is your spike damage, but it has a big animation, so it is very easy to avoid it. However, there are measures you can take to increase your chance of landing your vaults. CCs from Staff Stealth 1 and Impact Strike 2nd combo gives you time to land 2 vaults. When it comes to weakening strikes, you can manipulate the distance you travel to a certain degree using the camera angle. Make sure you have your opponent untargeted if you want to land all 3 hits with this. You can also spin in place by using shadow steps after the animation starts. You can also simply just bound, steal, and debilitating arc for heavy damaging combo. The default Staff 3 has a rollback animation, but you can delay the rollback by pressing jump and Staff 3 together. The rollback only has a fraction of the half a second evade, so it is gimmicky to use it as an evade. Instead, you can cancel the rollback by stowing weapon or performing any action after the jump. This is a very powerful tool because you can utilize this to keep yourself in a favorable position, such as when you are chasing a kiting enemy, you can debilitating arc and cancel the rollback to continue the pressure. The longer you play staff, you will notice that the most reliable way to do damage isn't through vault, but by utilizing auto attacks, your dodges, and debilitating arc. Another thing to note about auto attack is that you have about 2 seconds after the initial to use your next combo in the sequence before it resets. Great thing about Staff 3 and Dodge is that it doesn't interrupt the auto attack sequence, so you can utilize them in the 2-second interval between the auto attack sequence. With that said, playing Staff Daredevil kind of gives you an old school feeling of playing Street Fighter games where you can use creative combos to reach your finishing move. The playstyle of this build is that you keep up the pressure while reflexively evading and outplaying your opponent's moves. Here's an example. I outplay the opponent's Shadow Shot by clearing the blind with Escapist Absolution trait and counter pressure them. Here, I utilize the third combo of the auto attack to reflect my opponent's projectiles back at her. After you queue up the third combo, you have 2 seconds to use it, and if you don't hit anything on your first swing, you can chain it again for a full 2 seconds reflect up time. But keep in mind that you can't block or reflect unblockable projectiles. On this video, I was actually using Deadly Art's Trickery and Daredevil trait lines. I was dueling the warrior, but I get interrupted by a Yakspin Zerg. Compared to acrobatics, Deadly Arts has much more damage, but it also lacks swiftness and doesn't have as much sustain.
Not enough energy. Eat my dust! Now that's a combo! To kill rising. Go ahead, hit. Why won't any of you help me? My leg. Go ahead, hit. Refreshing. There's one to remember me by.
That feels good.
On this clip, I'm using my acrobatics build. Compared to deadly arts, you have more resources and evades, so you can play a bit more aggressively and get away with it. So right there, I used my vault to score a high reward, but it actually ended up punishing me instead. In outnumbered fights, any mistakes can be fatal. So despite being a daredevil, it's actually better to always choose the most optimal option instead of the high risk, high reward option. Remind yourself that you don't have infinite amount of dodges. So you want to manage your resources and time your evades while kiting. Once the outnumbered fight turns into a 1v1, you have the advantage because you should have the better 1v1 build.